In 1966, my father was transferred from a job in one city to a new job in another city, which meant my family had to move. We had to move far away from the familiar landscape of fields and sidewalks in Flint, Michigan, far away from my buddies, Mark Kalaga, who lived right next door, and Carol Stevens, who lived just a block away. I was a timid and shy child of 6 going on 7, and the prospect of leaving everything I knew was absolutely terrifying. But move we did, and it was every bit as awful as I'd imagined. Everything in the new neighborhood was strange and threatening to me. Little did I know, though, how soon all of that would change. One hot, sultry August afternoon, not long after we had settled into our new house in Saginaw, Michigan, my 2 sisters and I were idly quarreling, as children do, about what to do with ourselves, when there came a thunderous knocking on the front door. We kids scattered like rabbits, forcing my mom to come all the way up from the basement to answer the knock. And there, standing on the doorstep, was a tall, curly-haired, gray-eyed, loud-voiced girl. She demanded to know if there were any children in the new family, if any of them were girls, and how old they were. And oh yes, she wanted to know our first names, our middle names, and our last names. Her name was Janet Caswell. Janet Gay Caswell, to be exact. She was 7 years old, and she became my first friend in Saginaw, Michigan, and my eternal salvation from loneliness and shyness. She took me under her wing, and she introduced me to all the other kids in the neighborhood. Janet was big, and she was loud, and she was bossy, and she was bright. She was imaginative and compassionate as well, and she had a true gift for friendship. Friendship, writes our Unitarian ancestor Henry David Thoreau, is an exercise of the purest imagination and the rarest faith. He wrote, "My friend is that one whom I can associate with my choicest thought. I always assign to him a nobler employment in my absence than I ever find him engaged in. And I imagine that the hours which he devotes to me were snatched from a higher society." A friend, he writes, is one who incessantly pays us the compliment of expecting from us all the virtues and who can appreciate them in us. We do not wish for friends to feed and clothe our bodies, but to do the like office for our spirit. The language of friendship, Thoreau says, is not words, but meanings. It is an intelligence above language. Now, some of you may be wondering what I'm all about by calling this sermon the Sacrament of Friendship. Sacrament is, after all, a very serious religious word. I was raised as a Unitarian Universalist. We didn't have sacraments. It always sounded to me like something requiring wine and candles and incense and perhaps prayers chanted in an ancient dead language. I was raised as a humanist. Sacraments were mumbo-jumbo, I was told. They were things we Unitarian Universalists just didn't need. In traditional Christian terms, I learned that a sacrament is a means of divine grace, a way that God blesses humankind. I learned that for some Christians, a sacrament is the way God enters the world in real time. For others, including our Protestant Christian forebears, a sacrament was a symbol of an inner grace, a symbol of a transformed spiritual reality. But for something to be sacramental doesn't mean that it's tied to the practices or beliefs of any one church or religion. I say a sacrament is the agent of a deep wholeness. Sacraments make profound love manifest. They are elements or actions which bring us into communion with life's larger purpose. Sacrament is when something breaks open, transcends its former limitation. It's when the holy or wholeness breaks through and a new possibility blossoms. I believe that friendships can be sacramental in this way. They ask us to risk intimacy, to step out beyond what might be convenient or comfortable. Friendships carry mystery, an elusive spark that opens us, that transforms us, that changes our awareness of self and other, and what is possible. In Thoreau's words, friendships speak in the language of meaning. They reveal to us what is of ultimate worth and value, and therefore are sacramental. I also mean to be provocative by using that word sacramental, because when we use a word like that, we wake up and we pay attention in a different way. We become more alert to the fact that there's something important here, not just to us as individuals, but to us as a religious community. Many of us remember childhood as a time of easy friendships. My daughter is now 14, but I remember when she was small how she used to make friends with new kids all the time. Practically anyone was welcomed as a playmate. The children would just walk up to each other and say, "Can I play with you?" Or, "Will you be my friend?" We don't do that very much anymore, do we? My daughter did have closer ties with a few children, and she still does. I know when I was little, I spent a lot of time with my friend Janet. We played with dolls, we jumped rope, we drew floor diagrams of elaborate houses on each other's driveways with chalk. We had dinner at each other's tables and sleepovers in each other's bedrooms. We played with other kids, yeah, but we shared our deepest thoughts, our biggest dreams with one another. We had an intimacy that is rare. My colleague, the Reverend Dr. Marilyn Sewell, says that in an intimate relationship, we risk being who we really are with another person. We are, each of us, trapped in our own mind and our own body and our own consciousness. And in an intimate relationship, we try to break those bounds with the crude tools that we have at hand. We try with look and language and touch to at least partially bridge what is ultimately unbridgeable. We join our inescapable private life with another such life in the space between us, where meaning lies. The reaching out is imperfect and will be misunderstood at times. But besides the food we eat and the air that we breathe, this intimacy is quite literally what gives us life. For Janet and me, the sharing between us, the intimacy, really did give life. Her friendship sheltered me from the isolation that could have easily resulted from my crippling shyness. For her, my friendship was a refuge from a family where her father regularly got drunk and beat up her mother and then started in on the kids. When we were together, we understood that there was a world beyond family. There was another soul to whom we could reveal ourselves at our deepest and most vulnerable. The sacrament of friendship transformed us both. Now, this may sound like pretty heady stuff for a childhood friendship, and perhaps my memory has glorified it a little. But I do believe that children have a need every bit as deep as we adults do to feel and share from the depths of their soul. And not all of us have families in which that is possible. We know it's often harder for us as adults to make friends now. It's partly because we're busy, right? Anybody here busy? Nod your head. Families take time, being a spouse or a partner takes time, work and caring for our houses or the places we live and all the stuff we own, it takes time. But adult friendships are also more difficult because we lose our willingness to play. We lose our willingness to risk. And unlike children, we adults, we have a lot to defend. We have property, we have position, and perhaps we have more than a few secrets to hide. Some say that women make friends more easily than men do. Those who say this often blame men. saying they just don't know how to share themselves. I think it's just that men's and women's styles of relating are different. I also think men experience a huge amount of cultural pressure that makes it difficult to keep and make deep friendships. We know it. Our culture says men don't cry, men don't talk about their feelings, men shouldn't get too close to other men. For the most part, if you watch the TV commercials, it looks like what men are allowed to do is to drink beer and go fishing, watch sports, and punch each other on the shoulder. I wouldn't presume to say that transformation cannot be manifested in these ways, because I know it can. But I do know that men often bond with one another through the things that they do, the work that they do together, through walking together through life, not just talking the way we women do. I know that on a very deep level, men long for communion with one another and have to fight the cultural norms to achieve it. So how do we make a friend? How do we do it? Well, I'd like to believe that we often meet our dearest friends in church. What better place to meet someone with whom we share common ground? I know that this congregation, like my own, has many groups and programs where people can meet each other and get to know each other. Social media can facilitate friendship as well. Right now, for me, one of my most cherished friends is somebody who I mostly see on Facebook. He's been helping me by being a listening ear as I ride the emotional roller coaster of separation and divorce. But sometimes, the very way we meet a friend proves to be a moment of grace, a sacramental moment. Many years ago, when I was living in Seattle and I was young and foolish, I signed up for a very expensive personal development seminar, more expensive than I could afford. The seminar course was well attended. Imagine a room full of hundreds of people wearing name tags. Kind of like church, right? But it was different from church because even though we, the participants, had been encouraged by the seminar leaders to talk with each other in class and outside of class and to support each other in the grueling, soul-searching work that the seminar called for, in that room, there was always more of an air of competition than cooperation. One night, a woman near the back of the room stood up and called us on the charade of support. "I don't know about the rest of you," she said in a very whiny voice, "but I'm certainly not feeling supported by anyone in this room." In response, the seminar leader standing in the front of the room said, "Okay, who's willing to support Maxine?" That was her name. Well, I thought Maxine sounded perfectly awful. Certainly not like anybody I'd want to hang out with. But I raised my hand. And the next thing I knew, Maxine and I were assigned to support each other. She gave me a ride home after class that night, and we found that we had nothing in common. Not a single thing. But I had made a promise that I would support Maxine, so week after week I called her, we talked, sometimes we got together for coffee or to take a walk, and every week she gave me a ride home from class. I didn't have a car. And after a while, it didn't matter that we had nothing in common, because we had become friends. And indeed, Maxine Fisher was my dearest friend for many years. What was that moment of grace that allowed this friendship to happen? Where was the sacrament? I say it happened when Maxine took the risk of standing up in front of all those people and speaking what was in her heart. I need support. And something in my heart said, yes. It was that moment of honesty and need in both of us, which with time and nurturing blossomed into a true love. Over the years, Maxine and I piled up a treasure trove of shared experiences and knowledge of one another because we were willing to continue to risk and to reach out, to be vulnerable and to go deep. Our friendship survived huge arguments and fights and misunderstandings, and continued to be strong even during the years when I moved away to go to seminary and to do my internship. When I got married, Maxine adopted my husband as her new second best friend. We just were together through thick and thin. I loved her, and I would have given my life for her. But ultimately, when the time came, I couldn't. In 1998, when I was pregnant, Maxine was diagnosed with a fast-moving brain cancer that took her life less than a year later. While I could not take the burden of cancer from her, what I could do was walk with her through to the end of her life. It was terrible because we lost her inch by inch, week by week, as the cancer eroded away her cognitive functioning. But our friendship, that sacrament, called me to be faithful in loving her even when she didn't know who I was anymore. I still miss Maxine Fisher. I probably always will. Friendships are so good for us. They're good for our health. They're good for our spirits. They help us stay honest. They help us enjoy life's good times and to weather the bad times as well. We need to honor them, make time in our lives for them, and nurture them. Or do we? Do we? Joseph Epstein asks those provocative questions about whether deep friendship is really, can we really afford it? Is it practical? Is it even useful in our day and age? Well, my answer to Joseph Epstein is Janet Caswell. Janet and I have never lost touch over the 47 years between 1966 and today. She has not always been my closest friend, but she is my most long-standing one. We hung around together all through our school years, and though we went off to different universities and vastly different life paths afterwards, for example, she is deeply conservative, and I am flamingly liberal. Even though we have lived very different lives, we've always shared the vagaries and victories of our lives with one another through letters and phone calls, an occasional visit, and now, of course, through that great paragon of friendship creating Facebook. My friendship with her is an ongoing sacrament. It affirms for me the continuity of life and life's larger meaning. It has always served to remind me as well to not lose touch with the little girl who I was, the little girl who was so vulnerable but who dared to make a friend. Friendship is a necessity, writes theologian Thomas More. I agree. He says, if we neglect it, we will feel its lack as a morbidity of soul. Throughout our lives, friends help us in the process of developing emotionally and spiritually. In friendship, we allow that sacred and vulnerable part of ourselves to be seen and to be touched. In friendship, there is a mutuality of giving and receiving that we freely choose, and it is in this mutuality that the sacrament of friendship resides. Ralph Waldo Emerson, our religious ancestor, wrote, "How many we see in the street or sit with in church, whom though silently we warmly rejoice to be with." Friendship waits just behind a million faces every day. Right here in your community, you teach yourselves and each other to reach out, to give, to reach out and receive, to do the daily caring of which friendships are made. Here we teach each other to forgive and to ask for forgiveness and to companion one another through all of life's chances and changes. My hope is that church is a place where the sacrament of friendship is taken seriously, a place where it is cultivated and created by all and for all, a place, too, where the power of hundreds of friendships come together and where the love and joy and understanding they generate becomes an energy not just to fuel our own lives, but to fuel the work that we do that helps make our world a more creative and compassionate place. Because, it's never for self alone that we do the sacred work of reaching out and taking risks. May we know that we are here for a purpose larger than self. May we know that we're held by and responsible to that greater wholeness, that we are always creating and co-creating, that is always manifesting through us and by us in partnership with the universe. So when you go forth, look for the friend behind those million faces. Shalom, blessed be, and amen.